Well, welcome back to another installment of Cupcakes Lullaby. I'm going to continue reading The Princess's Bride. We're at chapter 7. Chapter 7 The Wedding. Inigo allowed Physic to open the door, not because he wished to hide behind the giant's strength, but rather because the giant's strength was crucial to their entering. Someone would have to force the thick door from its hinges, and that was right up Physic's alley. "It's open," Physic said, simply turning the knob, peering inside. "Open?" Inigo hesitated. "Close it then. There must be something wrong. Why would something as valuable as the prince's private zoo be left unlocked?" "It smells of animals, something awful in there," Physic said. "Did I get a whiff?" And there's the picture of the door. "Let me think," Inigo said. "I'll figure it out." And he tried to do his best, but it made no sense. "You didn't leave diamonds lying around the breakfast table, that you kept the zoo of death shut and bolted. So there had to be a reason. It was just a matter of exercising your brain power, and the answer would be there. The answer to why the door happened to be unlocked was really this: it was always unlocked. And the reason for that really was this: safety. No one who had entered via the front door had ever survived to exit again. The idea basically belonged to Count Rugen, who helped the prince architect the place. The prince selected the location, the farthest corner of the castle grounds away from everything, so the roars wouldn't bother the servants, but the count designed the entrance. The real entrance was by a giant tree, which a root lifted and revealed a staircase, and down you went until you arrived at the fifth level. The false entrance, called the real entrance, you took down the levels the ordinary way. First to second, to third, or actually second to death. "Yes," Inigo said finally, "you figured it out. The reason the door was unlocked is simply this: the albino would have locked it. He would never have been stupid as not to. But Physic, my friend, we got to him before he got to it. Clearly, once he was done with his wheelbarrowing, he would have begun locking and bolting. It's quite all right. You could stop worrying. Let's go." "I just feel so safe with you," Physic said, and he pulled the door open a second time. As he did it, he noticed not only the door was unlocked, it didn't even have a place for a lock, and he wondered should he mention that to Inigo. But he decided against it, because Inigo would have to wait and figure some more. And they had done enough of that already, because although he said he felt safe with Inigo, in truth he was very frightened. He had heard odd things about this place. The lions didn't bother him, or who cared about gorillas? They were nothing. It was the creepers that made him squeamish, and the slitherers, and the stingers, and the everything. Physic decided to be truthful and honest. Spiders and snakes and bugs and bats and you name it. He just wasn't very fond of any of them. "Still the smell of animals," he said, and he held the door open for Inigo, and together, stride for stride, they entered the Zoo of Death, the great door shutting silently behind them. "Quite a bizarre place," Inigo said, moving past the large cages in which the cheetahs and the hummingbirds and other swift things. At the end of the hall was another door with a sign above it saying, "To Level 2." They opened the door and saw a flight of stairs leading very steeply down. "Careful," Inigo said. "Stay close to me and watch your balance." They started down toward the second level. "If I tell you something, will you promise not to laugh at me, or mock me, or be mean to me?" Physic asked. "My word," Inigo nodded. "I'm just scared to pieces," Physic said. "Be sure it ceases," Inigo said right back. "Oh, that's a wonderful rhyme." "Some other time," Inigo said, making another feeling quite bright about the whole thing, sensing the pleasure in having Physic visibly relax as they described. So he smiled, clapped Physic on the shoulder, and for the good fellow he was. But deep inside, Inigo's stomach was nodding. He was absolutely appalled and astonished that the man of unlimited strength had power to be scared to pieces. Until Physics spoke, Inigo was positive that he was the only one who was genuinely scared to pieces, and the fact that they both were did not bode well if panic time came. Someone would have to keep his wits, and he was assumed automatically that since Physic had so few, he would find retaining them not all that difficult. No good, Inigo realized. Well, he would simply have to do his best to avoid the panic situations, and that was that. The staircase was straight and very long, but eventually they reached the end of it. Another door Physic gave a push. It opened. Another corridor lined with cages, big ones though, and inside great baying hippos and 20-foot alligators thrashing angrily in shallow water. We must hurry, Inigo said, picking up the pace, much as we'd like to dawdle, and he half ran towards the sign that said to level 3. Inigo opened the door and looked down, and Physic peered over his shoulder. Inigo said. The staircase was different. It was not nearly as steep, and it was curved halfway, so whatever was near the bottom of it was quite out of sight, and they stood at the top preparing to go down. There were strange candles burning high on the walls of the reach. The shadows they made were very long and very thin. Well, I'm certainly glad I wasn't brought up here, Inigo said, trying for a joke. Fear, Physic said. The rhyme came out before he could stop it. Inigo exploded. Really? If you can't maintain control, I'm going to send you right back up and you can just wait there all by yourself. Don't leave me. I mean, don't make me leave you. Please, I mean to say, beer. I don't know how the F got in there. I'm really losing patience with you. Come along, Inigo said. They started down the curving stairs, Physic following as the door closed behind them. Two things happened. The door quite clearly locked. Out went the candles on the high walls. Don't be frightened, Inigo screamed. I'm not, Physic screamed right back. And then above his heartbeat he managed, What are we going to do? Simple, said Inigo after a while. Are you frightened too? Asked Physic in the darkness. Not remotely, Inigo said with great care. And before I meant to say easy. I don't know how the S got in there. Look, we can't go back and we certainly don't want to stay here, so we just must keep on going as we were before. These little things happened. Down, down is our direction. Physic, but I can tell you're a bit edgy about all this, so, out of the goodness of my heart, I will let you walk down not behind me, not in front of me, but right next to me, on the same step, stride for stride. And you put your arm around my shoulder because that will simply make you feel better. And I, so not as to make you feel foolish, will put my arm around your shoulder, and thus, safe protected together, we will descend. Will you draw your sword with your free hand? I already have. Will you make a fist with yours? It's already clenched. Then let's look on the bright side. We're having an adventure, Physic, and most people live and die without being as lucky as we are. They moved down one step, then another, then two, then three, and as they got the hang of it, Why do you think they locked the door behind us? Physic asked as they moved. To add spice to our trip, I suspect, replied Inigo. It was certainly one of the weaker answers, but it was the best he could come up with. Here's where the turn starts, said Physic, and they slowed, making the sharp turn without stumbling, continuing on down. And they took away the candles for the same reason. Spice? Less likely. Don't squeeze me quite so hard. Don't you squeeze me quite so hard. By then they knew they were for it. There has been for many years a running battle among jungle zoologists as to which of the giant snakes is biggest. The anaconda men are forever trumpeting the Ornico specimen that weighed well over 500 pounds, while the python people never fail to reply by pointing out the African rock python found outside Zambezi measured 34 feet 7 inches. The argument, of course, is silly, because biggest is a vague word, having no value whatever in arguments if one is serious. But any serious snake enthusiast would admit, whatever his schooling, that the Arabian Garstini, though shorter than the python and lighter than the anaconda, was quicker and more ravenous than either. And this specimen of Prince Humperdinck's was not only Well, for its speed and agility, it also kept in a permanent state just verging on the outskirts of starvation. So the first coil came like lightning as it dropped from above them and pinioned their hands so the fist and sword were useless, and the second coil imprisoned their arms. Do something, Inigo cried. I can't. I'm caught. You do something. And there's the snake. Fight it, Physic. It is too strong for me. Nothing is too strong for you. The third coil was done now, around the upper shoulders, and the fourth coil and final coil involved the throat. And Inigo whispered in terror because he could hear the beast breathing now and could actually feel its breath. Fight it. I'm. Physic trembled with fear and whispered, Forgive me, Inigo. Oh, Physic, Physic. What? I had such rhymes for you. What rhymes? Silence. The fourth coil was finished. Inigo, what rhymes? Silence. Snake breath. Inigo, I want to know the rhymes before I die. Inigo, I really want to know. Inigo, tell me the rhymes, Physic said. By now he was very frustrated, and more than that, he was spectacularly angry. And one arm came clear of one coil, and that made it a bit less of a chore to fight free of the second coil. And that meant he could take that arm and bring it to the aid of the other arm, and now he was yelling out, You're not going anywhere until I know those rhymes. And the sound of his own voice was really impressive, deep and resonant. And who was the snake anyway, getting in their path of Physic, when there were rhymes to learn? By this time, not only were both arms free of the bottom three coils, but he was furious at the interruption, and his hands grabbed toward the snake breath. And he didn't know if snakes had necks or not. But whatever it was that you called that part it was under its mouth, that is the part which his giant hands, and he gave it a smash against the wall, and the snake hissed and spit. But the fourth coil was looser, so Physic smashed it again, and a third time, and then he brought his hands back a bit for leverage, and he began to whip the beast against the wall, like the native washwomen beating a skirt against the rocks. And when the snake was dead, Inigo said, Actually, I had no specific rhymes in mind. I just had to do something to get you into action. Physic was panting terribly from his labors. You lied to me, is what you're saying. My only friend in all my life turns out to be a liar. Ooh. He started thromping down the stairs, Inigo stumbling after him. Physic reached the door at the bottom and threw it open and slammed it, with Inigo just managing to slip inside before the door crashed shut. It locked immediately. At the end of the corridor, to the fourth level, a sign was clearly visible. Physic hurried toward it. Inigo pursued him, hurrying past the poisoners, spitting cobras and the gaboon vipers, and perhaps the most quickly lethal of all, the lovely tropical stonefish from the ocean outside India. I apologize, Inigo said. One lie in all these years, that's not such a terrible average when you consider it saved our lives. There is such a thing as principle, was all Physic could answer, and he opened the door that led to the fourth level. My father made me a promise never to lie, and not once in my life have I ever been tempted, and he started down the stairs. Stop, Inigo said. At least let me examine where we are going. It was a straight staircase, but completely dark. The opening at the far end was invisible. But it can't be as bad as where we've been, Physic snapped, and down he went. In a way, he was right. For Inigo, bats were the ultimate nightmare. Oh, he was afraid of them like everybody else, and he would run and scream if they came near. In his mind, though, hell was not a bat-infested. But Physic was a Turkish boy, and people claim the fruit bat of Indonesia is the biggest in all the world. They try telling that to a Turk sometime. Try telling that to anyone who has heard his mother scream, Here come the king bats, followed by the poisonous fluttering of wings. Here come the king bats, Physic screamed, and he was quite literally, as he stood halfway down the dark steps, paralyzed with fear. Behind him now, doing his best to fight the darkness, came Inigo. And he never heard that tone before, not from Physic. And Inigo didn't want bats in his hair either. but it was worth that kind of fright. So he started to say, "What's so terrible about King Bats?" But what was all he had time for before Physic cried, "Rabies, rabies!" And that was all Inigo needed to know. And he yelled down, "Physic," and Physic couldn't move. So Inigo felt for him in the darkness as the fluttering grew louder, and with all his strength he slammed the giant on the shoulder, hollering down. And in this time, Physic went to his knees obediently. But that wasn't enough, not nearly, so Inigo slammed him again, crying, "Flat, flat, all the way down," until Physic lay on the black stairs, shaking, and Inigo knelt above him, the great six-fingered sword flying into his hands. And this time it was a test to see how far down the 90 days of brandy had taken him. How much of the great Inigo Montoya remained, for yes, he had studied fencing, true. He had spent his life more learning the Agrippa attack and the Bonetti defense. And of course, he had studied his Thibault. But he had also, one desperate time, spent a summer with the only Scot who ever understood swords, the crippled MacPherson. And it was MacPherson who scoffed at everything Inigo knew. It was MacPherson who said, Thibault is fine if you fight in a ballroom, but if you meet your enemy on terrain that is tilted and you are below him. And for a week Inigo studied all the moves from below, and then MacPherson put him on the hill in the upper position. And when those moves were mastered, MacPherson kept right on, for he was crippled, his legs stopped at the knee, and he had a special feel for adversity. And what if your enemy blinds you, MacPherson once said. He throws acid in your eyes, and he drives in for the kill. What do you do? Tell me that, Spaniard. Survive that, Spaniard. And now, waiting for the charge of the King Bats, Inigo flung his mind back toward MacPherson's moves. And you had to depend on your ears. You found his heart from the sounds, and now he waited. Above him, Inigo could feel the King Bats massing, while below him, Physic trembled like a kitten in cold water. "Be still," Inigo commanded, and that was the last sound he made, because he needed his ears now. And he tilted his head toward the flutter, and the great sword firm in his right hand, the deadly point circling slowly in the air. Inigo had never seen a king bat, knew nothing of them, how fast they were, how they did not come at you, at what angle, and how many made each charge. The flutter was dead above him, now 10 feet perhaps more, and the bats could see in the night. Did they have a weapon too? Come on, Inigo was about to say, but there was no need. Because with a rush of wings, he had expected, and a high, long shriek he had not. The first king bat swooped down at him. Inigo waited. The flutter was off to the left, and that was wrong, because he knew where he was, and so did the beast. So that meant they must have been preparing something for him. A cut, a sudden turn, and with all the control is left to his brain, he kept his sword just as it was, circling slowly, not following the sound until the fluttering stopped, and the king bat veered in silence toward Inigo's face. The six-fingered sword above drove through like butter. The death sound of the king bat was close to human, only a bit higher pitched and shorter. And Inigo was briefly interested, because now there was a double flutter. They were coming at him from two sides, and one right, one left. And MacPherson told him, always move from strength to weakness, so Inigo stabbed the first to the right and then drove left. And two more almost human sounds came and went. The sword was heavy now. 3 dead beasts changed the balance. And Inigo wanted to clear the weapon, but now another flutter, a single one, and no veering this time, straight and deadly for his face. And he ducked, and he was lucky. The sword moved up into the heart of the lethal thing, and now there were 4 skewed on the sword of legend. And Inigo knew he was not about to lose a fight. From his throat came the words, "I am Inigo Montoya, and still the wizard. Come for me." And when he heard 3 of them fluttering, he wished he had just been a bit more modest. But it was too late for that. He needed surprise. And he took it, shifting position against the beast, standing straight. taking their dives long before they expected it. And now there were 7 king bats on his sword, and his sword was completely out of balance. And that would have been a bad thing, a dangerous thing, except for one important aspect. There is silence now in the darkness. The fluttering was done. Some giants you are, Inigo said then, and he stepped over Physic and hurried down the rest of the darkened stairs. Physic got up and lumbered after him, saying, Inigo, listen. I made a mistake before. You didn't lie to me, you tricked me. My father always said tricking is fine. So I'm not mad at you anymore. And that's alright with you, then it's alright with me. They turned the knob on the door at the bottom of the black stairs and stepped into the 4th level. Inigo looked at him. You mean you'll forgive me completely for saving your life if I completely forgive you for saving mine? You're my friend, my only one. Pathetic. That's what we are, Inigo said. Athletic? That's very good, Inigo said. So Physic knew they were fine again. They started toward the sign that said to level 5. Passing strange cages, this is the worst yet, Inigo said. He jumped back because behind a pale glass case, a blood eagle was actually eating what looked like an arm. And on the other side there was a great black pool, and whatever was in it was dark and many-armed, and the water seemed to get sucked toward the center of the pool, where the mouth of the thing was. Hurry, Inigo said, and he found himself trembling at the thought of being dropped into the black pool. They opened the door and looked down toward the 5th level. Stunning. In the first place, the door they opened had no lock, so it could not trap them. In the second place, the stairs were all brightly lit. In the third place, the stairs were absolutely straight. And in the 4th place, it wasn't a long flight at all. And in the main place, there was nothing inside. It was bright and clean, totally without the least doubt empty. I don't believe it for a minute, Inigo said, holding his sword at the ready. He took the first step down. Stay by the door. The candles will go out any second. He took a second step down. The candles stayed bright. A third step. A fourth. There were about a dozen steps in all, and he took 2 more, stopping in the middle. Each step was perhaps a foot in width, and he was 6 feet from Physic. 6 feet from the large, ornate, green-handled door that opened into the final level. Physic? From the upper door. What? I am frightened. It looks all right, though. No, I suppose it's supposed to fool us. Whatever we've gotten by before, this must be worse. But there's nothing to see, Inigo. Inigo nodded. That is why I'm frightened. He took another step down toward the final ornate green-handled door. Another 4 steps to go, 4 feet to go. 48 inches from death. Inigo took another step. He was trembling now, almost out of control. Why are you shaking, Physic from the top? Death is here. Death is here. He took another step down, 24 inches to dying. Can I come join you now? Inigo shook his head. No. No point in you dying too. But it's empty. No, death is here. Now he was out of control. If he could see it, he could fight it. Physic didn't know what to do. I'm Inigo Montoya, the wizard. Come for me. He turned around and around, sword ready, studying the brightly lit staircase. Now you're scaring me, Physic said. And he let the door close behind him, and he started down the stairs. Inigo stared up at him, saying no. They met on the 6th step. 72 inches from death now. The green speckled recluse doesn't destroy as quickly as a stonefish. And many think that the mamba brings more suffering, what with the ulcerating and all. But gram for gram, nothing in the universe comes close to the green speckled recluse. Among other spiders compared to the green speckled recluse, the black widow is a ragdoll. Prince Humperdinck's recluse lived behind the ornate green handle of the bottom door. She rarely moved unless the handle turned. She was stuck like light, and then she struck like lightning. On the 6th stair, Physic put his arm around Inigo's shoulder. We'll go down together, step by step. There's nothing here, Inigo. The 5th step. There has to be. Why? There's a nasty little spider. Yeah. Because the prince is a fiend, and Rugen is his twin in misery. And this place is their masterpiece. They move to the 4th step. That's wonderful thinking, Inigo, Physic said aloud. But inside, he was starting to go to pieces because here he was in this nice bright place, and his one friend in all the world was cracking from the strain. And if you were Physic and you hadn't had much brain power, you found yourself 4 stories underground in a zoo of death looking for a man in black that you really didn't think was down there. The only friend you had in all the world was going quickly mad. What did you do? 3 steps now. If you were Physic, you panicked. Because if Inigo went mad, that meant the leader of this whole expedition was you. And if you were Physic, you knew that the last thing in the world you could ever be was the leader. So Physic did what he always did in a panic situation. He bolted. He just yelled and jumped for the door and slammed it open with his body, never bothering with the niceties of turning the pretty green handle. And as the door gave behind his strength, and he kept on running until he came to the giant cage, and there inside still lay the man in black. Physic stopped then, relieved greatly, because seeing the silent body meant one thing: Inigo was right. And if Inigo was right, he couldn't be crazy. And if he wasn't crazy, then Physic didn't have to lead anybody anywhere. And that's when the thought reached his brain. Physic smiled. Inigo, for his part, was startled by Physic's strange behavior. He saw no reason for it whatsoever. He was about to call after Physic when he saw a tiny green speckled spider scurrying from the door handle. So he stepped on it with his boot as he hurried to the cage. Physic was already inside the place, kneeling over the body. "Don't say it," Inigo said, entering. Physic tried not to, but his face, dead. Inigo examined the body. He had seen a lot of corpses in his time. Dead. He sat down miserably on the floor and put his arms around his knees and rocked back and forth like a baby. Back and forth, and back. It was too unfair. You expected unfairness if you breathed, but this went beyond that. He, Inigo, no thinker, had thought he hadn't found the man in black. He, Inigo, frightened of beasts and crawlers and anything that stung, had brought them down the zoo unharmed. He had said good-bye to caution and stretched himself far beyond any boundaries he had ever dreamed he possessed. And now, after such effort, after being reunited with Physic on the day of days for this one purpose, to find the man to help him, to find the plan to help him revenge his dead Domingo, gone. All was gone. Hope, gone. Future, gone. All the driving forces of his life, gone. Snuffed out, beaten, dead. I am Inigo Montoya, the son of Domingo Montoya, and I do not accept it. He sprang to his feet and started up the underground stairs, stopping only long enough to snap commands. Come along. Bring the body. He searched through his pockets for a moment, but they were empty from the brandy. Have you got any money, Physic? Some. They pay well at the Brute Squad. Well, I just hope it's enough to buy a miracle, that's all. When the knocking started on his hut door, Max almost didn't answer it. Go away, he almost said, because lately it was only kids that come to mock him. Except this was a little past the time for kids being up. It was almost midnight. And besides, the knocking was both loud and at the same time rat-a-tat-tatty, as if the brain was saying to the first, hurry up. I want to see a little action. So Max opened the door a peek's worth. I don't know you. Aren't you Miracle Max that worked all those years for the king? The skinny guy said. I got fired, didn't you hear? That's a pitiful subject. You shouldn't have brought it up. Good night. Next time learn a little manners, and he closed the hut door. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat. Get away. I'm telling you, or I'll call the Brute Squad. I'm on the Brute Squad, said the other voice from the outside the door. The big voice you wanted to stay friendly with. We need a miracle. It's very important, the skinny guy said from outside. I'm retired, Max said. Anyway, you wouldn't want someone the king got rid of, would you? I might kill whoever you want to miracle. He's already dead, the skinny guy said. He is, huh? Max had a little interest in his voice now. He opened the door a peek's worth again. I'm good at dead. Please, the skinny guy said. Bring him in. I'm making no promises. Miracle Max answered after some thought. The huge guy and his skinny guy brought in this big guy and put him on the hut floor. Max spoke to the corpse. Not so stiff as some, he said. Skinny guy said, we have money. Then go get some great genius specialist, why don't you? Why waste time messing around with me? The guy who the king fired. It almost killed him when it happened. For the first 2 years, he wished it had. His teeth fell out from the gnashing, and he pulled the few loyal tufts from his scalp in wild anger. You're the only miracle man left alive in Florin, the skinny guy said. Oh, that's why you come to me. One of you said, what do we do with this corpse? And the other said, let's take a flyer on the miracle man that the king fired. And the first one probably said, whatever we've got to lose, you can't kill a corpse. And the other one probably said, you're a wonderful miracle man, the skinny guy said. It was all the politics that got you fired. Don't insult me and say wonderful. I was great. I am great. There was never, you hear me, Sonny, a miracle man could match me. Half the miracle techniques I invented, and then they fired me. Suddenly his voice trailed off. He was very old and weak, and the effort at passionate speech had drained him. Sir, please sit down, the skinny guy said. Don't sir me, Sonny, Miracle Max said. He was tough when he was young, and he was still tough. I got work to do. As feeding my witch when you came in. I got to finish that now, and he lifted the hut trap door and took a ladder down into a cellar, locking the trap door behind him. When that was done, he put his finger to his lips and he ran to the old woman cooking hot chocolate over the coals. Max had married Valerie Beck 1,000,000 years ago, it seemed, at Miracle School, where she worked as a potion ladler. She wasn't, of course, a witch, but when Max started practice, every miracle man had to have one. So since Valerie didn't mind, he called her a witch in the public, and she learned enough of the witch trade to pass herself off as one, under pressure. Listen, listen, Max whispered, gesturing repeatedly toward the hut above. Upstairs, you'll never guess what I got. A giant and a... I'm not racist. I'm just reading the book. I got a giant and a spick. A giant on a stick, Valerie said, clutching her heart, and hearing wasn't what it once was. Spick, a Spanish fella. Scars and everything, a very tough cookie. Let them steal what they want. What do we have worth fighting over? They don't want to steal. They want to buy. Me. They got a corpse up there, and they want a miracle. You're always good at dead, Valerie said. She hadn't seen him trying so hard not to seem excited since the firing. All had but done him in. She was very carefully kept her own excitement under control. If only he would work again. Her Max was such a genius. They'd all come back, every patient. Max would be honored again, and they could move out of the hut. In the old days, the hut was where they tried experiments. Now it was home. You had something else pressing on for the evening. Why not take the case? I admit that, no question, but I suppose I did. You know human nature. They'd probably try getting... You want to be on the YouTube channel, Riley?
Oh my god, are you reading to the YouTube channel?
Yes.
Oh, hey guys. I have a question.
What's up, sweet?
Can Buttplug and can I go to Buttplug's house tonight?
No.
What? I can't go to White. Why?
Dude, I'm in the middle of something. Let me answer you in about 15 minutes. Please, let me finish.
Get out of the house.
You know human nature. They could probably try getting out without paying. How could I force a giant to pay if he doesn't want to? Who needs that kind of grief? I'll send them on their way and you can bring me up the nice cup of chocolate. Besides, I was halfway through an article on eagle's claws that were very well written. Get the money in advance. Go demand. If they say no, out with them. If they say yes, bring the money down to me. I'll feed it to my frog. They'll never find it even if they change their mind and try to rob it back. Max started back up the ladder. What should I ask for? I haven't done a miracle. It's what, 3 years now? Prices may have skyrocketed. 50, you think? If they got 50, I'll consider. If not, out they go. Right, Valerie agreed. And the minute Max had shut the trap door, she clambered silently up the ladder and pressed her ear to the ceiling. Sir, we're in a terrible rush, so this is one voice said. Don't you hurry me, Sonny. You hurry a miracle man. You get rotten miracles. What do you want? You'll do it then? I didn't say I'll do it. Sonny, don't try pressuring a miracle man. Not this one. You try pressuring me, out you go. How much money you got? Give me your money, Physic. The same voice said again. Here's all I got, the great voice boomed. You count it, Inigo. There was a pause. 65 is what we got, the one called Inigo said. Valerie was about to clap her hands with joy when Max said, I've never worked for anything that little in my life. You've got to be joking. Excuse me again. I got to belch my witch. She's done eating by now. Valerie hurried back to the coals and waited until Max joined her. No good, he said. They only got 20. Valerie stirred away from the stove. She knew the truth, but dreaded having to say it, so she tried another tack. We're practically out of chocolate powder. 20 could sure be a help at the barterer's table tomorrow. No chocolate powder, Max said, visibly upset. Chocolate was one of his favorites, right after cough drops. Maybe if it was a good cause, you could lower yourself to work for 20, Valerie said. Find out what they need, the miracle. They'd probably lie. Use the bellows cram if you're in doubt. Look, I would hate to have it on my conscience if we didn't do a miracle when nice people were involved. You're a pushy lady, Max said. But he went back upstairs. Okay, he said to the skinny guy. What's so special I should bring back out of all the hundreds of people pestering me for every day for my miracles, this particular fella? And believe me, it better be worthwhile. Inigo was about to say, so he could tell me how to kill Count Rugen. But that didn't quite sound like that kind of thing that would strike a cranky miracle man, as aiding the general betterment of mankind. He said he's got a wife. He's got 15 kids, so they haven't a shred of food. If he stays dead, they'll starve. So, oh, Sonny, you are a liar, Max said, and he went to the corridor, and he got out the huge bellows. I'll ask him, Max grunted, lifting the bellows towards Wesley. He is a corpse. He can't talk, Inigo said. We got our ways, was all Max would answer. He stuck the huge bellows way down Wesley's throat and started to pump. You see, Max explained as he pumped, there's different kinds of dead. There's sort of dead, mostly dead, and all dead. This fella here, he's only sort of dead, which means there's still memory inside, if there's still bits of brain. Apply a little pressure here and a little more there, sometimes you get results. Wesley was beginning to swell slightly from all the pumping. What are you doing? Physic said, starting to get upset. Never mind, I'm just filling his lungs. I guarantee you it ain't hurting him. He stopped pumping the bellows after a few moments more, and started shouting into Wesley's ear. What's so important? What's here worth coming back for? What have you got waiting for you? Max carried the bellows back to the corner, and then he got out pen and paper. It takes a while to work its way out, so you might as well answer me some questions. How well do you know this guy? Inigo didn't want to answer that, since it might have sounded strange, admittingly, that you had only met him once alive, and then to duel to the death. How do you mean exactly? He replied. Well, for example, Max said, was he ticklish or not? Ticklish? Inigo exploded angrily. Ticklish? Life and death are all around us and you talk ticklish? Don't you yell at me, Max exploded right back, and don't mock my methods. Tickling can be a terrific in the proper instance. I had a corpse once, worse than this fellow, mostly dead he was, and I tickled him and tickled him, and I tickled his toes, and I tickled his armpits and his ribs, and I got a peacock feather and went after his belly button. I worked all day and I worked all night, and the following dawn, mark me, this corpse said, I just hate that. And I said, hate what? He said, being tickled. I've come all the way back from the dead to ask you to stop. And I said, you mean this that I'm doing now with the peacock feather? It bothers you? And he said, you couldn't guess how much it bothers me. And of course I just kept on asking him questions and tickling, making him talk back to answer me. Because I don't have to tell you, once you get a corpse really caught up in conversation, your battle's half over. True love. Physic grabbed onto Inigo in panic, and they both pivoted, staring at the man in black, who was silent again. True love, he said, Inigo cried. You heard him. True love is what he wants to come back for. That's certainly worthwhile. Sonny, don't tell me what's worthwhile. True love is the best thing in the world, except for cough drops. Everybody knows that. Then you'll save him, Physic said. Yes, absolutely, I will save him, if he said true love. But you misheard, whereas I, being an expert of the bellows cram, will tell you any qualified tongue man will only be happy to verify, namely, that the F sound is the hardest for the corpse to master, and it therefore comes out as voix. And your friend said was to bluff, which he meant obviously to bluff. Clearly he is either involved in some shady business or a card game he wishes to win. And that is certainly not a reason enough for a miracle. I'm sorry, I never change my mind once it's made up. Goodbye, take your corpse with you. Liar, liar, shrieked suddenly from the now open trapdoor. Miracle Max whirled. Back, witch, he commanded. I'm not a witch, I'm your wife. And she was advancing on him now in an ancient, tiny fury. And after what you have just done, I don't think I want to be that anymore. Miracle Max tried to. The bellows. Wesley's feet. Calmer, but she was having none of it. He said true love. Max, I could hear it. True love, true love. Don't go on, Max said, and now there was a pleading coming from somewhere. Valerie turned toward Inigo. He's rejecting you because he is afraid. He is afraid he's done. That the miracles are gone for his once majestic fingers. Not true, Max said. You're right, Valerie agreed. It isn't true. They never were majestic. Max, you were never any good. The ticklish cure you just saw. A fluke. All the drowners, I returned. Chance. Valerie, I've been married 80 years. How can you do this to me? Because true love is expiring and you haven't got the decency to tell why you don't help. Well, I do, and I say this. Prince Humperdinck was right to fire you. Don't you say that name in my hut, Valerie. You made a pledge you'd never breathe that name. Prince Humperdinck, Prince Humperdinck, Prince Humperdinck, Prince Humperdinck. At least he knows a phony when he sees one. Max fled toward the trapdoor, his hands going to his ears. But this is his fiancée's true love, Inigo said. If you bring him back to life, he will stop Prince Humperdinck's marriage. Max's hands left his ears. The corpse here, he comes back to life, Prince Humperdinck suffers. Humiliations galore, Inigo said. Now that's what I call a worthwhile reason, Miracle Max said. Give me the 65, I'm on your case. He knelt beside Wesley. He said. What? Valerie said. She knew that tone. While you were doing all the talking, he slipped some sort of into mostly dead. Valerie tapped Wesley a couple more times, sniffing. She said, you'll have to work around that. Max did a few taps himself. Do you suppose the oracle's still up? Valerie looked at the clock. I don't think so. It's almost 1. Besides, I don't trust her all that much anymore. Max nodded. I know, but it would be nice to have a little advance hint on whether this is going to work or not. He rubbed his eyes. I'm tired. I tried going in. I wish I had known in advance about the job. I have napped this afternoon, he shrugged. Can't be helped. Down is down. Get me the encyclopedia of spells and the hex appendix. I thought you knew all about this kind of thing, Inigo said, starting to get upset with himself now. I'm out of practice, retired. Have been 3 years. You can't mess around with these resuscitation recipes. One little ingredient wrong and the whole thing blows up in your face. Here's the hex book in your glasses, Valerie puffed, coming up the basement ladder. As Max began thumbling through, she turned to Inigo and Physic, who were hovering. You can help, she said. Anything, Physic said. Tell us whatever is useful. How long do we have for the miracle if we work it? When we work it, Max said from his textbook. His voice was growing stronger. When we work it, Valerie went on. How long does it have to maintain full efficiency? Just exactly what's going to be done. Well, it's hard to predict, Inigo said. Since the first thing we have to do is storm a castle, and never be really too sure how those things work out. An hour pill should be about right, Valerie said. Either it's going to be plenty or you'll both be dead. So why not say an hour? We'll all three be fighting, Inigo corrected. And then once we've stormed the castle and we've stopped the wedding, steal the princess and make her escape, allowing the space somewhere in there for me to dual count Rugin. Visibly, Valerie's energy drained. She sat wearily down. Max said, tapping his shoulder, no good. He looked up. Huh? They need a fighting corpse. Max shut the hex book. No good, he said. But I bought a miracle, Inigo said. I paid you 65. Look here, Valerie thumped Wesley's chest. Nothing. If you hear anything so hollow, the man's life has been sucked away. It'll take months before there's strength again. We haven't got months. It's after 1 now, and the wedding's at 6 tonight. What parts can we hope to have him working in order in 17 hours? Well, Max said, considering, certainly the tongue, absolutely the brain. And with luck, it may be a little slow walk if you can nudge him gently in the right direction. Inigo looked at Physic in despair. What can I tell you, Max said. You need a phantasmagoria. And you could not have gotten one of those for 65, Valerie added consolingly. And this is just more author-wise. More author-wise. Anyway. You mean that, Inigo said, appalled? That's it, Max nodded proudly. He had not been up this long stretch since the old days, and he felt terrific. Valerie was so proud. Beautiful, she said. She turned to Inigo then. You sound so disappointed. What did you think a resurrection pill looked like? Not like a lump of clay the size of a golf ball, Inigo answered. Me again, last time this chapter. No, this is an anacrodulistic. This is not anacrodulistic either. There were golf balls in Scotland 700 years ago, and not only that, remember Inigo had studied with Macpherson the Scot. As a matter of fact, everything Morgan Stewart wrote is historically accurate. Read any book on Foreignese history. But Morgenstern didn't write any books, you lying sack. Moving on. I usually give them a coating of chocolate in the last minute. It makes them look a lot better, Valerie said. It must be 4 o'clock, Max said then. Better get the chocolate ready so it'll have time to harden. Valerie took the lump with her and started down the ladder to the kitchen. You never did a job better. Smile. It'll work without a hitch, Inigo said. Max nodded very firmly, but he still did not smile. There was something in the back of his mind bothering him. He never forgot things as important things. He never forgot this either. He just didn't remember it in time. At 4:45, Prince Humperdinck summoned Yellen to his chambers. Yellen came immediately, though he had dreaded what it was. He knew was about to happen. As a matter of fact, Yellen had already had his resignation written in the envelope in his pocket. Your Highness, Yellen began. Report, Prince Humperdinck said. He was dressed brilliantly in white, his wedding costume. He still looked like a mighty barrel, but brighter. All of your wishes have been carried out, Highness. Personally, I have attended to each detail. He was very tired, Yellen was, and his nerves long past frayed. Specify, said the prince. He was 75 minutes away from the first female murder, and he wondered if he could get his fingers to her throat before even the start of a scream. He had been practicing on giant sausages all afternoon. They had the movements down pretty pat, but then giant sausages weren't next, and all the wishing in the world wouldn't make them so. All passages to the castle itself had been resealed this very morning, save the main gate. That is now the only way in, and the only way out. I have changed the lock to the main gate. There is only one key to the new lock, and I keep it wherever I am. When I am outside with 100 troops, the key is in the outside lock, and no one can leave the castle from the inside. When I am with you, I am now the key is in the inside lock. No one may enter from the outside. Follow, said the prince, and he moved to the large window of his chamber. He pointed outside. Below the window was a lovely planted garden. Beyond that, the prince's private stables. Beyond that, naturally, the outside castle wall. That's how they will come, he said, over the wall, through my stables, past my garden to my window. Throttle the queen, and back the way they came before we know it. They Yellen said, though he knew the answer. The Gildians, of course. But the wall where you suggest is the highest wall surrounding all the foreign castle. It is 50 feet high at that point, so that would seem the least likely point of attack. He was trying desperately to keep himself under control. All the more reason why they should choose this spot. Besides, the world knows that Gilderians are unsurpassed as climbers. Johan had never heard that. He had always thought that the Swiss were the ones that were unsurpassed as climbers. Highness, he said at one last attempt, I have not yet from a single spy heard a single word about a single plot against the princess. I have it on unimpeachable authority that there will be an attempt made to strangle the princess this very night. In that case, Yellen said, and he dropped to one knee and held out an envelope, and I must resign. It was a difficult decision. The Yellens had headed the enforcement of Florin for generations, and they took their work more than seriously. I'm not doing a capable job, sire. Please forgive me, and believe me when I say that my failures were those of the body and mind, not of the heart. Prince Humperdinck found himself quite suddenly in a genuine pickle, for once the war was finished. He needed someone to stay in Gilder and run it, since he couldn't be in two places at once, and the only men he trusted were Yellen and the Count would never take the job, being obsessed as he was these days with finishing his stupid pain primer. I do not accept your resignation. You are doing a capable job. There is no plot. I shall slaughter the queen myself this very evening. You shall run Gilder for me after the war. Now get back to your feet. Yellen didn't know what to say. Thank you seemed to be inadequate, but it was all he could come up with. Once the wedding is done with, I shall send her here to make ready while I shall, with boots carefully procured in advance, make tracks leading from the wall to the bedroom, returning from the bedroom to the wall. Since you are in charge of law enforcement, I expect you will not take long to verify my fears, that the prince could only be made by the boots of the Gilderian soldiers. Once we have that, we'll need a royal proclamation or two. My father can resign as being unfit for battle, and you, dear Yellen, will soon be living in Gilder Castle. Yellen knew a dismissal speech when he heard one. I'll leave you with no thought in your heart but to serve you. Thank you, Humperdinck said, pleased because after all loyalty was one thing he couldn't buy. And in that mood, he said to Yellen by the door, if you see the albino, tell him he may stand at the back of my wedding. That's quite all right with me. I will, your highness, Yellen said, adding, but I do not know where my cousin is. I went looking for him less than an hour ago, and he was nowhere to be found. The prince understood important news when he heard it, because he wasn't the greatest hunter in the world for nothing, and even more because if there was one thing he could say about the albino, it was he was always to be found. My God, you don't suppose there is a plot, do you? It's a perfect time for the country celebrates. If Gilder were about to be 500 years old, I'd know I'd attack. I will rush to the gate and fight to the death if necessary, Yellen said. Good man, the prince called after him. If there was an attack, it would come in the busiest time, during the wedding, so he would have to move that up. State affairs went slowly, but still he had the authority. 6 o'clock was out. He'd be married no later than 5:30, or know the reason why. Pause there.